What it is, people, my name is Batman, and I now have the Xbox One with the Call of Duty dedicated servers included, and I must say they do run excellently. But I'm making this video basically because I'm worried that they might not be returning in the next Call of Duty, which I'm assuming will be Black Ops 3. Up to this point, I had assumed that if Ghost had dedicated servers, then all future CODs on the Xbox and PS4, Xbox One and PS4 would also have dedicated servers. And I saw it as a policy shift that would apply to the future of the series as a whole. But in the last couple of days, I've been starting to think that it is very possible that these dedicated servers might be a one-time thing. And I'll lay out my thinking for you, and you can decide for yourself. So how I picture them making this shift and subtly taking away the dedicated servers is by basically doing exactly what they did with pre-gen consoles, dedicated servers announcements. When all the pre-release hype is going on for the next Call of Duty, they will announce that they are going to use a hybrid system of dedicated and listened servers. Emphasis on the listened servers. Now, many of you have seen that video where I accused IW of false advertising in regards to dedicated servers, but there was something very, very important I left out in that video because it was something I didn't fully understand at the time. And I want to kick myself for not looking into it further because this is the most important part. This is the big lie. This is the trick. This is where they fucking duped me, where they duped everyone, and I'm afraid they're intent on duping us all once again. Now, what they tweeted was, and I quote, "In order to make sure that people have the best possible experience regardless of platform, location, or connection, Ghosts will be using a hybrid system of dedicated servers and listen servers." This is the sneakiest tweet of all time, and unlike the other instances in which I feel they have misled the community, this time it's an outright lie, and I totally missed it. Because what that tweet says is that a hybrid system of dedicated and listen servers provides the best possible experience regardless of platform, location, and or connection. But that's just not true. It's a straight up lie because the best possible connection experience would be using dedicated servers exclusively, which is what they have on the new gen consoles. And if that hybrid system did provide the best possible experience, why didn't they put the new gen Call of Duty on that system as well, the hybrid system? Now, the term hybrid system I think is actually very misleading because they aren't working together. You're either playing on a dedicated server or on a listen server, and there are some very big differences between the two. A dedicated server is an advanced piece of hardware specifically designed to host and process large amounts of data at high speeds. It is maintained and operated by a professional company at data hubs around the world. They are also very expensive. Now, a listen server is free. It runs using the game client. It chooses the player with the best connection and communicates remotely with other players over the hosting player's residential internet connection. Performance is often degraded because the operating machine is also generating an output image. And further, the hosting player will often have a large latency advantage in-game, and if the host leaves the game, the server ceases to exist. If that sounds familiar, that's because it is, because it's exactly what Call of Duty has been using this entire fucking time. Listen servers aren't anything new. That's the norm. All the lag we have ever complained about in the last 4 Call of Duties took place on listen servers. So when that motherfucker Mark Rubin says we're providing the best connection possible by using listen servers, that's a straight up legitimate outright lie. What he's really saying is that Call of Duty Ghosts will have some dedicated servers, but it will also still be using the same broken system it's been using this whole time. Now, I don't know about a lot of you, but I don't think I ever got on a dedicated server on the pre-gen consoles. I remember plenty of host migrations. I remember games just shitting out because somebody dashboarded or turned off their Xbox, and I certainly remember latency lag, and a lot of it. So much so that when I upgraded to the new gen, which is on dedicated servers only, where I've experienced no lag at all, my KD has actually jumped 30 points from 1.79 to 210. And I know for a fact that lag is still a serious issue on those pre-gen consoles with their hybrid system, simply because the only reason my channel has been doing so well since Ghost's release is because my 2 videos with lag in the title have exploded, because the #1 COD related search right now is how to fix that lag. So everyone, including myself, believed that pre-gen consoles would have dedicated servers, but we were lied to. Because really, you're only going to be on a dedicated server sometimes. And again, because he didn't specify a quantity, it could be a hybrid system consisting of 1 dedicated server and the rest is all listen servers, the same as it's always been. But they still get to call it a hybrid. So What I want to look at is why the new gen consoles got a 100% dedicated servers system with no listen servers involved, and why that could very possibly be a one-time thing. So, for starters, let's say that my lag conspiracy theory is wrong, that the lag in Call of Duty is simply the result of Activision not wanting to spend money on dedicated servers. Now, you ask, why would Activision not want to invest that money in servers when most other multiplayer games do? Well, the only logical answer is that because Call of Duty has so many more players, I know for the last couple of years they've had up to tens of millions more players than even their closest competitor, Battlefield. That means they have to buy a lot more dedicated servers than other games. Because if you cram too many players onto one dedicated server, the lag will be just as bad as if you hadn't had the server at all. However, the ratio of cost-benefit analysis should still be the same. It should still be profitable, right? Crysis has this many players, so they can afford this many servers. Call of Duty has that many more players, so they can afford that many more servers. I can feed 10 dogs with 3 bags of dog food. I can feed 100 dogs with 30 bags of dog food. If the cost ratio is profitable at a small number, it should stay profitable, or even get more profitable at a larger number. However, because Call of Duty would have to hypothetically buy so many more dedicated servers, they stand to benefit in the form of much higher profits by foregoing the dedicated servers altogether. Something that I think most people don't realize about today's economy is that the most major corporations have hit a ceiling in terms of how many consumers they can reach. Every human being they can sell products to at a profit, they are already selling products to. The humans left on Earth that American corporations are not selling to are either so far away that the shipping costs make the region unprofitable, or the region's population is so poor that there won't be enough sales for it to be profitable that way either. So for instance, India has 2 billion consumers, but because most of them are too poor to afford $60 video games and $500 consoles, you won't see the industry making a huge showing there anytime soon. So most major corporations in North America and Europe have reached this point where they can no longer boost profits or grow the franchise by selling more, because there's nobody left to sell to. They've hit a sales ceiling, and obviously this includes Activision. For instance, we've all seen that global Who's Online map at the multiplayer main menu that they've had since Black Ops 1, right? Where it lights up the regions where people are online, and for 4 years, day and night, it is always the exact same map. I don't even know why they have it. North America and Europe are completely lit up, and then there's scattered dots throughout the rest of the world. And if you combine those dots from the entire world outside of North America and Europe, the sales would probably not even come close to the total in either the US or UK separately. And so, the only way they can boost profits consistently is to cut costs. The employees who get promoted, the CEOs that bring home the biggest bonuses, are the people who can find the most clever and efficient ways to cut costs. So how much is Activision saving by refusing to service over 20 million players with dedicated servers? Probably a fuck ton of cash. And again, I am not a strictly anti-corporation, all big business is evil, hippy-dippy type, but frankly, excluding Costco, I've never heard of a corporation sacrificing any amount of profit for the sake of a better product or service. And even the die-hard free market fanboys will admit that, because that's exactly how it should be in their eyes. So throughout this commentary, we have to assume that everything Activision does is to boost profits, okay? So the first point I want to make is that because there's so few people on the new gen consoles, for instance, I've never seen more than like 25,000 total online players on the Xbox One, Activision would not have to buy very many dedicated servers for the Xbox One and PS4. The cost would not be very expensive at all. So keep that in mind throughout this commentary as well. Now, it's not that in the past other games and their corresponding publishers have been making a noble profit sacrifice for the sake of their game by spending money on dedicated servers. I'm sure they would opt out of those costs if they could. The simple reality is that they can't, because Call of Duty can get away with no dedicated servers while other games cannot. This is because Call of Duty has a ridiculously higher amount of players than any other FPS game. On a listen server system, which is what Call of Duty has been using up until the new gen Ghosts, the less populated a playlist is, the more lag there will be. This is because the fewer people there are, the less likely it is you connect to a host that is near you. And the farther away the host is, the more lag there will be and the worse that lag gets, because it comes down to timing. And although these machines do communicate at very high speeds, if you're communicating with a host that is on a different continent, there is going to be a delay in the time it takes for information to travel back and forth. And since everyone is going to be at different distances from said host, everyone is going to be sending and receiving information at different rates, because even at such high speeds, if you're in California and the host is in UK, and the guy you're shooting at is in the UK as well, then you're going to be at a severe disadvantage in that gunfight because he's going to be communicating with the host so much faster. These machines communicate at such high speeds that that disadvantage might only be half a second, but half a second is a very long time in Call of Duty or any first-person shooter. So to solve this, games implement lag compensation, a system that tries to balance out all the varying connection speeds so that everyone is on an even playing field. Now the problem with lag compensation on a listen server system is that the average player does not usually have a very powerful internet connection or very powerful hardware. So if you're hosting a Call of Duty match on a listen server, you have 11 other players who are constantly sending and receiving information from you and your setup. If I shoot this guy, my internet tells the host internet that I'm shooting him, and then the host internet has to tell him he has been shot. That's important to understand. You're not directly communicating with anyone but the host. Every player has to tell the host what they are doing at any particular moment in the match, and then the host has to tell every player what every other player is doing at all times. And then on top of that, the host connection has to keep track of all these other players' internet speeds and then calculate when to send and receive that constant stream of information to each player. And it's going to be a different calculation for every single individual player in the match. So that is a complicated process, and the average player setup won't be able to handle it after a certain point, and this is where we start to understand why Call of Duty can get away with listen servers but other games cannot. The average player setup could consistently handle communications between various other players, so long as those players are all within a certain distance, so that there's some consistency within the calculations. If all 12 players in the match are in California, that's doable, and even if there are minor timing errors, they will be so minuscule many players won't even notice. What the average player setup cannot handle consistently is communicating across countries or across oceans and continents, especially when you have multiple players in multiple countries. If I'm here in California and my internet is trying to manage players from Canada, the East Coast, and the UK all at once, it's not going to be a smooth experience. So the reason Call of Duty in the past has gotten away with a listen server system is because they had tens of millions of more players than every other game, and what that means is that if I get on Call of Duty at any given time, there will generally be about 200,000 to 300,000 players online. At least a couple thousand of those players are in my state, and probably a couple hundred are in my county and or city. If you're in the UK on Call of Duty, there are going to be thousands of players nearby on your island, and that's why people living in big cities never have severe lag issues, because if you're in New York and you have over 10 million people all condensed into this one location, you're never going to have to communicate with anyone outside of the city limits. So for Call of Duty, there were always enough people close by so that listen servers could work. But on a game like Crysis or Homefront back in the day, or even Battlefield, because they have anywhere from 10 to 20 million fewer players, they cannot guarantee that there are thousands of fellow Crysis players in your state. When you're on these less popular games, there's a very high chance, especially if you want to play one of the less popular playlists on that game, that you will have to connect to someone on the opposite side of your country, in a different country, or even in a different continent. And the listen server system won't be able to handle that. So those games have to have dedicated servers, otherwise their multiplayer would simply break down and be unplayable after the first weeks of release. And even Call of Duty starts to break down at a certain point, about 8 months after release, when most people are mostly done with the game. In Black Ops 2, a lot of the less popular playlists like Multi-Team, Headquarters, Capture the Flag, all became basically unplayable due to lag after March of last year, because they all were never able to break 1K players in the playlist ever again. Now, the one point I want to make in regards to the lag conspiracy, the idea there's an ulterior motive that the lag might be intentional to an extent, is that in past Call of Duties, you did not have these very serious lag issues, and they were on listen servers too. You can go back and play MW2, World at War, or COD 4, and to this day, they still have less lag than Black Ops 2 or Ghosts, or any other Call of Duty that came afterwards. And again, they were on listen servers too. We had host migrations, we had dashboarding, and the host advantage was a problem, obviously, but nobody complained about host advantage even half as often or half as angrily as everyone complains about lag now. That's the main thing that I simply cannot understand. I know they said this new compensation system was to remove the host advantage, but why does nerfing the host have to affect every player in the match? And at this point, isn't it obvious that even with the host advantage, that compensation system was superior and less frustrating to what it's been for the last 4 years? I just don't understand. But regardless of all of that, whether it's on purpose or not, the point I want to make is that Ghosts on the new gen consoles would be in the exact same boat as those other less popular shooters from the past. Without dedicated servers, Ghost simply would be unplayable. Even if they wanted it to lag on purpose, they wouldn't have the option because it would already be lagging too intensely for even die-hard COD addicts like myself to stick around. Because at this point, not a lot of people have switched to new-gen Call of Duty Ghosts, and the playlists are very empty. Like I mentioned earlier, I've never seen more than 25k total online players on the Xbox One. TDM never breaks 10k, Domination never breaks 5k, Ground War doesn't break 4k, and then the playlists like Kill Confirmed, Cranked, Blitz, they never even break 1k. Hunted is at like 20 players total, most of the time. And like, if you got on in the middle of a weekday or late at night on a school night, so I bet you some of those playlists would be at 0. Alright, TDM would be the only playlist over 1,000, and playlists like Hunted or Blitz would be in the double digits. What that means is that on Listen servers, for the same reasons I was just talking about, Ghost multiplayer simply would not work. The majority of the playlists would be unplayable because the playlists are so empty, because the lag would be so severe. And more importantly, severe enough so that everyone noticed. I think a big reason Call of Duty gets away with its lag issues is because so many players, particularly casual players, aren't very good at recognizing lag when they see it, because again, it is a tenth of a second delay. It's difficult for the human mind to keep track of in the first place, and because things happen so quickly in Call of Duty anyways, it's hard to tell the difference between when that guy sprinted around the corner and got me legitimately or illegitimately. How I figure it out generally is matching up the sequence of events with that of the kill cam. For instance, if I walk into a room and then the enemy walks into the room and kills me, I'll watch the kill cam, and if he walked into the room before I did, I know something fishy was going on, right? But on Ghost, with the playlist this empty, without dedicated servers, the lag wouldn't have been a minor thing. It would have been very noticeable, particularly in the playlist with under 1,000 people, and especially in a couple months once the game's population starts to drop and then dwindle as people move on to different games or just get bored of Ghost. It would be the kind of lag where you're shooting a guy facing the other direction point blank and not getting hit markers, and then he kills you without turning around. Or where everyone is sliding around the map at super speed because the game is trying to fast forward people to where they are on their actual screen. Or the kind of lag where every couple of seconds the frame rate just freezes for a second or two. You know, the screen just freezes because the system is taking people's information in turns, or it needs to let the UK players catch up to you or whatever. It wouldn't be debatable if that was a laggy kill or not. It would simply be, dude, this shit is not working right now, and everyone of all ages, hardcore and casual, would notice. So Ghosts absolutely require dedicated servers to even work properly. And on top of that, it didn't cost very much, not even anywhere close to what it would have been previously, because they didn't have to buy that many. So the dedicated servers work very well, and ironically, Ghosts on the Xbox One is the least laggy Call of Duty I've played in 4 years. Dedicated servers are specifically designed to handle these kind of complicated networking tasks, to bring in a constant stream of data from 12 different sources at varying speeds and from a variety of locations, and process that information with an exact precision, and then return that stream of information back to those 12 sources nearly instantaneously. They are expensive pieces of hardware, and they are generally operated and maintained by a professional company. I've been using the term buy, which is actually kind of inaccurate. Really what happens is you rent them from those professional companies that own and operate them. But the point is they get the job done, and done well. You can play with Canadians and Australians simultaneously without a problem. A good analogy for dedicated servers versus listen servers would be like if you're sending a letter, would you rather use a professional courier service with an organization of trained employees and a fleet of delivery trucks and planes that has guaranteed you a certain arrival time? Or just give the letter to some random college kid on a moped? Now granted, if you're just sending the letter to someone in your city, the college kid works, although there's still a lot of potential for various hiccups, like maybe the kid crashes the moped into the river and gets pinned underneath it and is slowly dying as he gets wide-eyed and flails as the merciless claws of death close in around him. Meanwhile, your letter is still in that worthless hippie's pocket. But anyway, here's the kicker. If dedicated servers were an incredibly cheap and, more importantly, an absolute necessity for Ghosts, simply because of the very unique and rare circumstances of Call of Duty Ghosts as a launch title for the new-gen consoles when the mass consumer transition is just barely getting underway, wouldn't it only be logical to assume that in the future, once the console transition is over, they resort back to the old listen server system? Now, I know what you're thinking. How could they do that? That would make everyone so angry. But frankly, people wouldn't know that it was happening. If there's anything that Ghosts has proven, it's that these motherfuckers are willing and able to jerk us around, to mislead and confuse us. Everyone, including myself, and I consider myself a cautious, aware, and informed consumer, believed that pre-gen consoles would have dedicated servers, and we were completely duped. So what's to stop them from doing it again? What's to stop them from saying, to provide the best possible connection experience in Black Ops 3. We are running a state-of-the-art hybrid system using both dedicated servers and listen servers, along with top-notch matchmaking to guarantee you are on the best connection possible. Everyone's gonna drink that Kool-Aid. And so my request to ye the people, my fellow gamers, my comrades in warrior blood, is don't stop talking about this because nobody else is. This whole thing from the beginning was a straight up lie and nobody even noticed. And I'm not saying, oh, everyone go share this video. Don't mention my name at all. But don't stop talking about this because you know what the deal is with listen servers, with dedicated servers, this hybrid system bullshit. These lame fucking tweets they put out that are so masterfully dishonest. And you make sure people know what the fucking scoop is, alright? Anyone that'll listen, anytime you're playing COD and somebody complains about lag, you seize that opportunity and you plant some skepticism in the motherfucker, you know what I'm saying? So that if they do try this shit again next year, there will be some raised eyebrows when these half-truth tweets start getting tossed around. In the end, it is only the power of the people and their words that can put a stop to this treachery, this butchery of my beloved pastime, of our community. Please remember to rate. This is Batman, signing out.